All right, and welcome back to the Unfair Advantage podcast, where we explore the intersection of tech sales and hiring. So, the struggles to finding top talent, wading through resumes, and the constant challenge of staff retention can significantly impact your reputation and a company's bottom line. So, each week I sit down with expert guests to share their insights and discuss strategies to attack these pressing issues. Join us as we delve into tech sales and hiring to uncover the unfair advantage that can give you and your business a competitive edge. My name is Jeff Bowie. I'm with Talent Reach. We're a boutique recruiting firm based here in Seattle. Here, we're really helping our clients with challenges related to things like increasing the quality and quantity of talent, navigating through challenging periods, and these days helping provide some guarantees that your next hire is the permanent one. So, sitting down today with Trent Gillespe, who is the founder and chief innovation officer of Day One Innovation. Trent, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm super glad to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. Give us a quick 30 seconds of who you are, what's going on over at Day One.
For sure. So I'm a former Amazon leader, and I started working to consult with companies about innovation after I left Amazon about 18 months ago. And so I help companies just go and figure out the best ways to innovate using Amazon and other practices, depending, I think, what is appropriate for that company.
So you talked to me a little bit about where you came from, because considering the news we've got, we're going to talk a little bit about layoffs happening at Amazon and Microsoft, especially today. Talk to me a little bit about the background of where you came from. What was the ground like?
Yeah, well, I've been in technology for about 20 years, but I did spend almost 9 years at Amazon, and there I did a number of different things that gave me a very unique view on innovation and global expansion and doing things in a high-scale organization. What I did is I had three primary roles there. I did coordinate global expansion across all businesses and geographies for a few years. I did the last mile technology innovation and product portfolio, so everything around kind of the big gray vans that you guys see around town now. And then I did Alexa privacy, so figuring out how to make Alexa private and make sure that it was actually doing the right things for customers. And so through that process, I was able to see, broadly across Amazon, really help and see how Amazon thought about things in the industry, how it thought about innovation, and then helped make a number of innovations come true and launched throughout the world.
Right on. So this is exactly what I was hoping to get. Super glad to have you here, because especially considering the opaqueness that we sometimes get with big companies about what's happening in their HR worlds. And so I'm going to dig into that in a little bit. Is there anything in particular you're working on or, want to promote or boost? What's happening? What's, current passion of yours?
Well, the passion of mine is just innovation, right? And so when I left Amazon, I decided this is really the thing that I've worked on through my whole career, and I love to take to other people. So I felt that Amazon is really one of the best examples of innovation that has really ever existed in the history of the world. Not to say it does everything perfectly. It's just better than most other companies. And so I thought that'd be a good starting place to figure out a model that other people can replicate and then use at their own companies. And so my passion is just to get that out there. I'm doing that in a lot of different ways, be it through my consulting, my speaking, presentations like this. And even in Seattle, I'm kicking off a new user group next week. I'm opening this up to the community to come and meet at the Collective on January 24th and hopefully start having good conversations, meet other people, and do cool stuff around innovation. So all of that.
Who would be interested? Like, who would be your target person that would really be interested in the Collective event?
In the Collective event, so just generally, I think innovation applies to almost anybody in business, right? But ultimately, I think that the group I'm most looking forward to at the Collective is going to be around business and technology leaders, or anybody who's leading or identifying innovations at their organizations. And so that can span, it doesn't have to be just even high tech. I work with many different types of companies, but it's really about the people that are really influencing innovation, right? And that's setting priorities, choosing what type of ideas to go after, identifying the ideas, figuring out how to bring technology to support them, all of those things. So if you have anything really to do with that, or you just think that Chat GPT and all this new technology is super interesting and cool, feel free to show up. We do ask people to register just so we have enough knowledge about how many people will show up that we don't overwhelm the space. And there's a meetup link for it under Seattle Innovators.
Okay, great. And I'll put a link out to it as well in the comments here of the event chat for anybody who's watching, and we'll boost it here in a little bit. So the big thing that I need to get my head around is that you're the Chief Innovation Officer, D1 Innovation. Innovation is a very sexy word, but and I like to do this. Help me get some meat around that. What is it in your world? How do you define quote unquote innovation? I feel like it's it's got a pretty broad definition that can lead people astray.
It does. It's got a very broad definition. I've never heard it called sexy before, so thank you for that. But
Yeah,
typically people just don't understand it because it is so misused. People consider, I bring up the example of an innovative toilet paper, right? Innovative toothbrushes. Every technology product that's ever existed is called innovative. Every company that does pretty much anything says they do it in innovative ways,
right.
right? And so it's so overused, it really has lost meaning. Okay. And so the biggest challenge that I end up having is to actually just describing to people what I mean when I talk about, oh, I do innovation, right?
Right.
And so the best definition that I use is innovation is that process you use of creating sustainable value from something new. Okay. I actually just realized I should have given you a slide on that so people could read it. But there's a couple important parts about that. And the first thing is that innovation is a process. Okay.
Right.
It's not the end result, because people say, oh, my mug, is an innovation. No, it might be the result of an innovation, right? And so it's a process where you create sustainable value doing something new. That's it. That could apply to just, hey, maybe you came up with a unique way to make a business process work, a unique way, for your audience to do sales. That is innovation, as long as it's creating new sustainable value. Okay. And so that's one of the key things where people get stuff wrong, is that they think anything can be innovation if you just do it, but you can destroy value, right? I think about things like, all the scooters that you see around Seattle or anywhere now, these batteries, battery-powered scooters and things. These are requiring massive $1 billion of resource investments. Nobody's using them. They're just going into the trash. That is actually not creating new sustainable value for our society. Right. And so that's what you don't want to do.
Therefore, it would not be categorized in your world as innovation. They might be
Right.
doing something new, but it's not hitting that other thing that's important.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly it. Right. And you can do, innovation again in any number of different roles, from sales to HR to technology, of course.
So how does one, and I'm assuming this is part of what you do with your clients, take a new idea and pair it with this creating the sustainable value? It doesn't sound even simple to me, actually. It
Yeah.
sounds like I can come up with a great idea. Talk a little bit about sort of how that comes together.
Yeah, how that works. There's a whole bunch of parts to innovation. Again, this is one of the reasons why it's not very well understood. When people think about innovation, again, there is this huge process component to it. But the best way to understand innovation is that it actually operates as a system. Okay. Maybe I'll come back to the system component in just a second here. But there's a whole lot of stuff around it. Ideation, and that's the whole point of like coming up with new ideas. It's called ideation, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole study around the best way to do that, right? And then when you've got that in place, then you have to actually go and do something with it and do that effectively. And that means you need to have good processes, be that agile software development or iterative development or whatever process you're following, right? So there's these things that stack around innovation that actually help you do it well, right? And so when I work with clients, I help them evaluate what parts of their system are working and which ones need opportunities to improve, right? And then we prioritize those and we go work through them. It might be, hey, this company's got 1 million great ideas, right? Then we figure out first, well, how do we narrow those down to the ones that actually support the business strategy? A lot of changes don't. This is an example, one example I can give from Amazon. I manage the global project and product and innovation portfolio for the last mile technology team across the globe. Okay. And so, as you might imagine, Amazon's big and we've got stakeholders in every geography, right? So US, UK, Japan, whatever. You had different businesses, be it, the DVD business, the photography business, whatever it may be. And they all wanted to do delivery. And so we had a huge number of stakeholders. And every year, Amazon would go through this process of planning. It's actually what they're doing right now, which is called OP1 and OP2 as they're planning. And all of those people would send in all these ideas, thousands of ideas. And we had to go through and figure out a process to say, with the resources we have, how can we look across all these thousands of ideas to figure out which ones are most important for Amazon to work on, right? And so there's a whole process to look at that. And it goes back to, What is your company strategy, right? Do you actually have a good company strategy? Which projects support the strategy? Which ones provide the most return and value to the organization in which timeframes? And so there's a whole process to that of identifying and working through that, and then choosing the right things that you can actually implement. So ideation is, an important phase to come up with ideas. The selection of those ideas is actually way more important, right? If you select the wrong things, your company is not going to do well.
And it sounds like you've got a situation to where if you don't then have a initial company, mission, vision, purpose, direction, game plan, whatever you want to call it, then the ideation and the creation of the value, all these other things you're talking about are more difficult or impossible to do. Fair?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mentioned a minute ago the system approach to innovation that I go through, and Jeff, I had sent you some slides before, and slide number 6 is probably a great one to bring up if you happen to be able to do that. This is a kind of a diagram of the innovation system. If you happen to
Let's
have
see if
that
I've got
handy.
the right one. Does that look right?
Yeah, that's perfect. What this is for anybody trying to learn about innovation or understand innovation, I think it's an important concept because the recognition has come about the last several years is that in a company, innovation works as a system. Okay. And that means that there's different parts of it. And when they work together, you get great innovation. When they don't work together, it sucks. Okay.
Right.
And so some academics actually looked at a bunch of these models that the companies had recommended, and they identified 8 consistent parts to innovation that happen at any successful and high innovating company. It's these parts. And I won't run through them all in detail, but each of these is a separate thing to focus on. It starts with leaders. You've got to have leaders that want to do innovation and actually understand innovation. Right? There's a lot of people like I talked to a CTO when I was starting my business, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he said, "Well, Trent, your number one issue is if you're working with high tech companies, they all already think they're innovative." Okay. So how do you get them to understand that maybe there's opportunity to improve? And that's true because leaders need to be like, yeah, I understand we could be better. Maybe they've been doing it the same way for 20 years. There's new practices, right? Do they have a passion or ambition to try and actually do better? So it requires leadership. Next one, environmental context. This is a great one for salespeople. I know that's your audience because this just means who's actually looking out at what's happening around you to identify opportunities. Okay. Now, a lot of salespeople, they're really close to the customer, right? You're hearing from what they want. You're seeing the marketplace. You're seeing competitors. So the question here is, how do you get that information back into your innovation process so your leaders can choose the best ideas? So there's actually a really important role that sales can support right here. And then the next one is direction. And that's where you were talking about a second ago. You have to have a really great plan and vision and mission for your company, right? And I even saw this at Amazon. Amazon has a really great direction at the very high level. They've had the same direction for 20 some odd years. Okay. But when it comes down to those individual groups, it falls apart. Right. And each individual group, and although they've got the higher level vision of customer obsession, right, operational efficiency, and in these things, when it comes down to how do you apply that to the team that is responsible for safety of drivers on road? How do you apply it? It's not very easy, and so you have to figure out your own prioritization process, right? And that's the direction component, and it's critical that leaders can help influence it to have the lower level teams choose the right stuff. Ultimately, that's where massive innovation happens. And so you need to make sure all those teams are very much aligned. So that's a very long way of describing it, but this is how everything begins to work together. And so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and I'd love to dig into each and every one of those. One of the things I'm curious about is when we look at how complex things are. You have your title, and I think we've talked a little bit about sort of how you feel it's important to have a title of Chief Innovation Officer. It seems like it's, is it a cat wrangler? It seems like you've got to have other leaders doing their very important high level jobs, but at the same time helping to be sort of, maybe I'm not being very fair, like the glue that keeps it together, or is it a standalone silo of like, here's my point? And how does if someone has it, a chief innovation officer work?
It's a really great question that's not figured out. And I don't think it applies the same to every company, right?
It is new.
Every company is at a different level of maturity. And so if you think about that system that I showed you a second ago, you've got companies that have, done nothing in multiple of those. They're a very low level of innovation maturity. Then you've got Amazon, or these big innovators like Microsoft or, Google. They're all the way at the top, right? So companies really differ in how well they're supporting innovation. And that means how they structure themselves also will differ depending on that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I recommend? Well, I recommend first, of course, assessing with your leaders, where are you and then what do you want to do? But from an organizational perspective, what's most important is not to have a chief innovation officer. It's to actually give the responsibility to somebody to be responsible for innovation, right? If I go to a brand new group of people that I've never worked with or a new executive team, I say, who's responsible for innovation? And literally nobody raises their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, one of my favorite quotes, and again, I've got this in one of those slides there. If you go to, let me see what slide this is. The very first slide, if you've got that.
Let's see what we got here. Right. Let's see if is it this one.
There you go. So I use this one a lot when I start with groups. Peter Drucker, very famous old management business expert, he said this: it's foundational to business. There's only two things in a business that make money: innovation and marketing. And so I start here because, if you ask a group of people, how many people have a marketing team? Every single company has a marketing team. Every single one. If you ask who's responsible for innovation or do you have an innovation team? Zero. Right?
And why is that?
And that's exactly the same things we're talking about, is people don't understand it. And so I bring this up because, it's said time and time again. There's another quote, you don't have to bring it up, but, Steve Jobs, innovation is the only thing that wins. Okay. And you can go through every innovator you've ever thought of, from Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, whoever, Peter Drucker, and they all will come down and say it's all about innovation, but it's so nebulous to people, they don't get it. And so people don't even realize it's actually something that they can learn. There's a whole system around it, and it works well, but you need to actually jump in and have that ambition to learn it. And you need to then focus on it and train your employees on it. And people just haven't done it. It's complex, but I think actually less complex than a lot of other things.
Aside from hiring you, which everybody should do,
of course, yeah.
What kind of resources do you recommend to get someone sort of over the hump to understand? Oh, okay, that's why I need this. I have innovation envy.
Yeah, there's a lot of books. Actually, if you search for innovation, and this is one of the problems. Again, you can go to Amazon, search for innovation, and there will literally be like a million different books you can read. Right, and so hey, grab a book and start reading somewhere. There's classics in the space. Clayton Christensen, he's got some classics. They really reveal it. So certainly take a look at that. I've got a whole shelf of things here. One of my favorite books that I actually start with a lot, if I'm going to do it like an executive reading series, Good to Great, people that are my age, you've heard of this book. It's dated now. Nobody really refers to it. But I actually think it's a really fantastic place to start because this actually became the model for Amazon. Okay. And again, most people don't know that. But when this book before it was actually published, the guy that wrote this, Jim Collins, sat down with Amazon and the executive team, walked them through it, and they really based most of their strategy as an organization around this book. Okay. And so very helpful to go out and read. But there's a bunch of different books that you can get up to speed on. I also do presentations. Again, that's the easiest way typically, if you're engaging with me, I do presentation to your organization about these things and get you started. Of course, there's other innovation agencies out there, but the problem is even most of them, they focus on that idea. They focus on, hey, you want to go and create this new robot. We'll go and do the robot for you, right? There's not a lot of firms that really focus on how to actually do innovation full circle outside of things like McKinsey and others. And I think that's where it gets out of reach, right?
It's tough, right? Because resources are always limited no matter where you are, and adding extra time and effort. We talk about this in the, in the sales world, or the, go-to-market roles that people fill, that, you can hire almost anybody as long as your management structure is there to support them.
Right.
But that's not always an option. Let me ask one more question around this. is innovation also doing something, instead of something new, doing something different?
Doing something different.
So, for
Sure,
example, like
yeah. You know, it,
hiring managers might do interviews one way. Doing something different obviously is quote unquote new and can really set someone apart if done right.
oh, absolutely. And different or new. I think that that could be synonymous in this situation because, um, there's also a misconception around innovation that it means invention.
Okay, talk
Okay.
about that.
And so a lot of people, when I say, "Oh, I'm going to go do an innovation," they think I'm going to go and like try and create the next unicorn with some billion-dollar idea that disrupts the world, right? Those happen, but actually not that many, right? And
Mhm.
invention means creating something for the first time in the history of the world.
Okay.
That's hard to do, right? Mostly what happens in innovation is you see there was an idea over here in one industry, maybe it's, I don't know, agricultural technology or something, right? It might be a different firm that is doing a sales process a different way. And you say, hey, I think we could use that.
Hmm.
And you bring it to your company and you use it and you create new value. That is innovation, right? It doesn't have to be something net new in the history of the world. It's net new to your process or your company or system that you have in place.
Okay, let me jump in because I think you said something really interesting there, is that it doesn't have to be, it can be part of your process. So it doesn't have to be like the tip of your spear, like this is our purpose, this is our product or service is totally innovative. It can be that we're the railroad, we've been doing the same thing for hundreds of years, but we're innovating in certain particular areas. Is
Yep,
that
that's exactly it. And if I go back to that definition I gave you originally, it's that process of creating sustainable value from something new, right? And that could be a small procedural change. It could be that, hey, in the hiring process, we're going to go and use a panel of people instead of just one person interview, right?
mhm, okay,
When I think about hiring, I actually talk about hiring quite a bit for innovation. Okay. Your people are critical. If you hire the right people that are innovation minded or have the right traits for innovation, that's going to end up increasing the amount of innovation in your company. Okay. And so the question is, how do you start looking for those people during the interview process? Okay. What are the questions that you ask that actually reveal if that person is going to be innovative when they join your firm? Okay.
okay,
And even just changing your HR process will make your company more innovative. That's not a new technology. And that's what I mean a lot. Anybody can influence the amount of innovation in their company. In the scope of their role, there's something they can do to increase the innovation. And if you get, a firm with 50 people and every person is making, a zero point 0.1 improvement every single day, that company on the whole will improve and be much better in a year than if people hadn't done that.
can you give me some specific examples or a good example you can think of, real, or if you can redact the name or product that
As
you,
far as like a hiring process.
hiring process, or bringing people in to, building a
Yeah.
team around this concept of innovation. It's still
Sure. So I use Amazon as a model a lot, of course, right? And there's a lot of reasons for it because it is the best model of innovation on the whole that I can find and I can give people examples from. And so Amazon's process of hiring is very well written down and described. You can find it online. There's a panel of people you typically will meet with. Each one of them asks you questions that are very specific and known questions and you just have to give answers that are consistent with Amazon's model. And that means they show customer obsession and they show innovation.
okay.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, dig into what is
Yeah.
that? How do you do that?
Yeah. So, an example, and again, you can look these up online, but it might be tell me of a time that you solved a problem for a customer.
Mhm.
Okay. And the person then you're interviewing has to go and answer that. And what you're looking for is did they give you terminology or an answer that makes you believe A, they care about the customer,
Mhm.
and B, they were able to go and solve a problem in an interesting or useful way. Innovation on behalf of the customer. That's it.
Okay.
And if you ask those literally that question, and there's a whole series of them online that you can just Google it. What does Amazon ask in interviews, right? They'll get a whole list. Okay. And just asking the question helps you identify if that person's going to be an effective hire for this, right? And then you get together and you can debrief it with the other 5, 6 people in your loop, and everybody makes a decision or vote and says, yes, we think this person's good, and they're in.
So you have to. There's two things there. One is being prepared
Oh yeah.
technically, and the other is making sure that you are, you know, speaking to the human beings that you need to convince. There's a sales aspect to that,
Mhm.
isn't there?
Yeah, there's cells in a whole bunch of things. I think from that perspective, the candidate needs to sell you as the interviewer that they have the right skills and
Mhm.
capabilities, interest, and all that. But organization certainly needs to have some planning around the hiring process to find the right people. Mhm.
Well, we know that Amazon's process is one of the best and it works. So obviously there's some elements there that they weed out people who might be trying to game the system or otherwise, for the most part, do a pretty good job. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
yeah. I think for the most part, there are some issues with it, but probably beyond the scope of what you want to talk about.
Okay, so what about a regular, like Earth-based company that has limited resources, doesn't have, I mean, the amount of time and effort that goes into that model for hiring is it's not common. It's just
Mhm.
not.
It's
Just
not,
usually we
but
work with startups who are like hair on fire. I got to bring great people in. Unfair advantage time. What is the kind of thing that someone can do? How can they bring in something new to their system, but make it sustainable? That helps
yeah,
them
I
build.
think it applies to every company. And I've worked at small companies, worked at Amazon, of course, large, but I think that every company should be able to take the time to do a panel interview, right?
Okay.
Employees are your most critical resource at the end of the day, right? They're the ones influencing your strategy, customer behavior, customer impact, value, all these things.
Sure.
So an interview with an employee, you do it in a panel that only consumes 5 hours, maybe, of time. It's worth that for somebody you're bringing on board, right? Regardless of the size of company. So I really think that, working on your HR side to find the right people is critical,
Mhm.
regardless of the size of company you're in.
So everybody should have a panel, meaning they meet sort of key leaders or other people they might be
Yeah.
working with. Is there a mix that you find works
Well,
better?
yeah, certainly. I mean, I'll tell you, Amazon is a mix, then and they've got it down to a very specific process, right? You have people who are stakeholders, you've got leaders, you've got coworkers, right? And representative functions. If they're a technical employee, then of course you'd have somebody from technical side who can assess them, right?
Mhm.
But you don't have to even be that rigid, but you need to ask good questions that get to the root of that person's capabilities and how they will behave, right?
Okay.
You can't just have an interview on, hey, you're a good guy. I feel like we could go out and have a beer together, right? That's not a good way to do a
Well,
hiring,
we
right?
are talking about something, innovation, that is squishier than, say, a technical exam that you might take for someone who wants to be a Java,
Yeah,
coder, right?
sure. Yeah.
Give me a couple like best questions or best examples of ways to really get to the heart of somebody. We've heard talk to some people in the past on the show, some really excellent ways of like
Mhm.
their ways of getting to, hey, are you really the guy that's going to last here? Because one of the biggest fears, if not the biggest fears, as a hiring manager, am I going to make a bad hire? Is this person going to last? Because you said 5 hours in a panel. It's not much if your employee works out and is productive, but it's a terrible waste of time if you bring in the wrong person and they're gone in 6 months.
Yeah, but absolutely. But it's even a worse waste of time if the number of people that come through that are poor is going to go
Mhm.
up if you don't go through that process, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So I think I gave the example earlier around tell me about a problem that you solve for a customer. I
Yep.
think that's an awesome place to start. I really recommend that, right? And then I'd probably just Google for some of the other ones Amazon uses, but that one is just so critical because it addresses the customer side of things, and it lets you see the person's motivations, lets you see the significance of what they consider to be a problem, right? It lets you see how they thought about and determined the solution to the problem, how you or how the person went and got other people to potentially join in to solve the problem. It just reveals so much. That's probably one of the best questions that I would have people ask.
And just bear with me as I push back just a little bit because I agree with you.
Mhm.
It's a great question. However, you and I both know that people are going to be studying for these things. They're going to put together answers they think someone's going to want to hear.
Mhm.
Give me the thing that the question that or the technique tactic that you can use to sort of really get underneath that, be like sweep away the
Yeah.
BS if it exists.
I don't know there's any perfect way to do it. Again, Amazon's methodology is you use the kind of the star process. And again, that's written online, but you look at everything around it. What was the situation that person did? And you really try to get to the details of it.
Mhm.
That's really the best you can do. And if you ask multiple questions from multiple different people, that'll give you kind of a 360 view, and that will hopefully will help identify those gaps and problems that person has, and hopefully increase the likelihood of success. But yeah, it's a tough process, and you're never going to be 100% correct, right? That's
Well,
just
and I,
the
and I
world.
really feel like, and it's worth saying again, that unfair advantage really is using a panel,
Yeah,
because you do get multiple. Hopefully, you have good people on your panel that you trust, because then you get some extra human experience on each individual. One of the things we see in the recruiting world is that, especially now, a lot of candidates aren't going to sit for 7 rounds of interviews.
mhm,
It's ideally 3,
yeah,
maybe 4, and sometimes we see it happen in 2. Is that fit? Can you get the right person in 3 interviews,
yeah,
even if one of them
absolutely. I would take as many as you can get, up to 5,
up to
right?
5? Yeah, that
Up to
seems
5.
like the upper
You know,
limit.
I think so. I mean, once you get to that point, you're not discovering more information.
Okay.
Right? There's a lot of repetition. It takes a lot of time, a lot of coordination. So I think as many as you can get up to that. Sometimes it might be one person or 2 people, right? Especially depends on the size of your firm, vacations,
Sure.
availability. I mean, all this stuff, right? But generally, the more people you have look at it, the more potential perspectives you're going to get, and the likelihood of a good hire is going to go up.
Love it. Okay, cool. Let me back up just a second. We were
Yeah.
talking about product or services that, um, might be new or might be, ideated on. But can you think of an example, even across history, of like a product that came out that people thought, oh, this is the inventors or the creators, this is the greatest thing ever. But then once it hit market, they, maybe spent a bunch of their
Yeah.
resources on getting it there. I see you already got one.
I mean, it happens continually, right? I mean, Amazon's got the Fire Phone, right? That's probably a good classic example there. Spend billions of dollars. Their one feature was 3D maps, right? I mean, who cares about a 3D map when you're driving down the road, right? I just want to get to the place I'm going, right? And so thought it was super cool, wasted $1 billion, right? Classic example, Segway. Dean Kamen wanted to come out with this revolutionary idea, hyped everybody up. It's cool, but it didn't really actually give value to most people. Okay.
And
And
so the
so
innovation part of that is figuring out in advance whether or not it's going to work, right?
it's figuring out how is it going to give value. Okay. And so one of the number one things I talk to people about is a theory in the innovation area, and it's called jobs to be done theory.
Okay.
And I think this is actually critical for salespeople to actually know. Again, there's a book on it. Jim Callback, you can Google it. What's it called? Just jobs to be done. It's a really great theory, and it supports innovation and sales, because ultimately it is, how do you determine what somebody actually wants and will pay for?
Okay.
Okay. And so when you approach innovation this way, what you say is, what is the job that person would hire this product or process for? Right. So as a salesperson, that is something you should be asking. Okay. Because,
Right.
if you're trying to sell whatever your product is, maybe you guys think it's an awesome product in your own company because you built it. You've got to have other people see the value of it. Right. And I
Yep.
think salespeople kind of get this natively, but innovation people and leaders don't, because they get so excited about whatever this product is, their little brain baby, that they want to get it out there without really verifying people will buy it, that people
Yeah.
want it. Okay. I mean, as an example, I mentioned the Fire Phone, and this is a huge problem in technology. I see this literally every day. I met with a startup yesterday that had reached out to me, and they've got $17 million in funding. They're trying to figure out how to get their product in the market. I saw their product. They gave me a short demo of it, and my response to them was, "What is the value you're going to give to your customers? It's an interesting technical solution, but who are you selling to,
Hmm.
right? What is the value it's going to give them?" And they aren't clear. So they've got $17 million. They went and built this product, and it's cool in what it does, but it's not clear who's going to buy it. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what they're struggling with. And so, when you start getting into like coming up with innovation projects and products and ideas, it helps to have a framework that makes you answer those questions. And so I think that jobs to be done theory is really the most effective, easy way to get to that anybody can learn and start on now.
And very applicable. It carries downstream into a sales context when someone, if you're in sales and you're really consultative, you're asking, I got a solution for you, but what are we trying to solve? Should I even
Right.
be talking to you? Because my time is valuable, and if I'm just going to pitch you a demo for something
Right.
you're not interested in, we're wasting a bunch of time.
Yeah. And yeah, you're wasting a bunch of time. You're not going to hit your sales numbers, right? Your organization isn't going to grow the way you need it to grow, and nobody's happy. And that's why, again, it's critical to go back and say, what is the job this person needs done? Right.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, to switch gears a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about layoffs. Let's talk about where we are in the current job market, because it seemed like at the end of the quarter last year, we were at the bottom, and now it seems, we'll see, right? Because the news is fairly new this morning. Microsoft is laying off another 10,000 people, 15.
Yep.
Amazon, of course, you have an inside scoop there. Give me your sort of, crystal ball. Where are we? What's going on? What's the reality look like?
I don't know if anybody knows what the reality looks like, but I can say from my perspective, it's overdue. Certainly Amazon, every company out there, I think had too many inefficiencies and people that they had loaded up on. And I think they're blaming the pandemic. I think this is actually something that's been going on before that. I think the pandemic is really just an excuse for all these organizations to say, hey, it's time to tighten the belt. Let's get rid of some of the waste that we had in our organizations.
That they had beforehand, you're saying?
Yes, beforehand.
Yeah, it seems like everybody bulked up during the pandemic because they sort of felt like they needed to, and then things escalated. You're saying,
yeah, no, I think that's a lot of BS. I bet you, and I haven't done it. If you went and looked at the number of people that were hired at these organizations and plotted it and whatnot, they've been on the same hiring curves for years, right? Amazon, yes, it did bring on a lot of operations staff during the pandemic, a lot of delivery drivers, right? But I remember a year ago, I used to actually track the figures of number of open positions in tech at Amazon, Microsoft, and others. I haven't looked at it, in probably 6 months. But a year ago, Amazon had 16,000 open positions in just the technology organization.
Wow.
16,000. Okay.
Open.
So that was open during the pandemic. Now, they didn't bulk up on the technology side. In fact, they had so many open things. I was saying they couldn't do innovation because there were so many opportunities they couldn't go after. Okay. So, I think there's a huge story here of just leaders saying it's a good time, a good excuse for us to tighten the belts. Okay. On the flip side of that, I actually think it's a fantastic opportunity for our communities. And that's the way I'm choosing to look at it. I think people can look at it because there's now more raw talent available that knows innovation, right? At the best methods that are out there at Amazon or Microsoft or wherever else, who can now join together to go and do new cool stuff.
Start their own things.
Start their own things. Like I'm actually thinking about proposing with some other organizations, having in Seattle 100 new startups launch in the next year.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? We've got the people. They're out of jobs today. They just need to get organized somehow. Wouldn't that be cool if we were able to do that? I think it's absolutely a possibility. I talk to, a couple startups every single week, right? Getting 100 in a year, I actually don't think it's a stretch at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you see that, we look at 08 and the downturn there, we saw a lot of, new things that were coming out. Again, the term innovation gets thrown out, but we're seeing the benefits of that. And I think that, and I'd ask you your feedback, that people who are hiring, people who are not Amazon, Microsoft, which is most of us, having an opportunity to really talk to some of the best talent in generations.
Yeah. There's been every study that's ever been conducted about recessions and innovation has shown reliably, if you invest in a recession, you win when the recession is over. Okay. Every single time. I don't remember the numbers offhand, but it's significant. It's like if you invest in it, you will get 50% more market share by the time the recession is over. I mean, it's significant differences compared to those competitors that are not investing. But the thing is, it requires confidence, it requires knowledge, capability of your leadership team to go out and do those things, right? It's hard to go out and say, you know what, I want to go create a whole new, team to go do innovation right now when there's so many worries around. But it's proven it will help. Okay, proven. If of course it's done in an effective way, right? So that's where you might need to evaluate that. But I think it's actually a fantastic time. The available talent now, the desire, the opportunities, you can get remote workers to help bring somebody in from another geography if they've got an expertise. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do right now. I'm super excited for what this is going to mean. And I think it's also great that this talent is fleeing from the big tech, because that creates more opportunity in other parts of the marketplace.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. And it's exciting. I'm curious what you're seeing happening so far. We're kind of in the midst of it. I mean, obviously, given the news today, are you seeing that the companies you're working with or you're consulting are actively out there recruiting? Not yet. Still.
No, I see a lot of concern. I mean, everybody that I'm talking to is just concerned.
Yeah.
That's more or less it, right? And there's a whole other conversation here about the macroeconomic environment, politics, and things. But from the companies I'm talking with, and obviously I'm a small company, so I'm not like a McKinsey that has thousands of different clients that it's talking to every day. But the feeling I get is people are concerned and not investing as they're waiting to see how this is going to pan out. That's a problem, right? That's a problem for the economy, and that's a problem for innovation. And that's where it requires, leaders, governmental leaders to step in and provide some confidence, about the direction we're going to go. So companies are willing to make these investments.
Or getting people off the starting blocks to sort of say, first person through the wall and all that. So, hey, now is the time. Like you just said, there's some proof behind it. How do we get people moving to say, okay, great, now we're going to take advantage. I'm going to take the risk. 'Cause that's the biggest challenge that we see in hiring is the risk involved.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different issues. I'd love to talk about that on if we had the time, but I think that there's two ways to go about things like this. One is show a positive reward. Hey, you're going to grow as a company. The other side is show the fear, right? You're going to be out of business if you don't do it.
Sure.
I don't know which one's better, right? I think right now one of the things people really need to be thinking about is Chat GPT and AI.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you're familiar or I think pretty much everybody in business has seen stuff going on around this recently. I'm happy to talk about that for a few. What was that? Sorry.
We're on top of it for the most part. Talk to me a little bit about where you think people should be looking.
I have been considering it. I've played with it. I'm probably going to write some, piece about it. But the thing is what people need to realize, and the thing I'm a huge advocate for is, our era has changed. It was this technology era, the internet era. I think we are now in what I refer to as the innovation era. Okay. The pace of innovation is increasing just so fast. Organizations that actually learn to innovate and do it effectively will be the ones that win. So when it comes to Chat GPT isn't going to get rid of people. Okay. But AI is going to make it so that AI does the routine tasks, and it still needs creative people that know how to use it. Okay. So that means, how do you build systems that can innovate quickly, leveraging AI and other technological improvements? Okay. That's what people need to do. So in a sales process, am I worried about AI affecting sales? Absolutely. If you're in sales, you should be worried about that too. Okay. It will go out and it will do lead generation. It will do marketing. It'll do content creation. It'll do all these things. But what it won't do is the creative aspects. It won't figure out, hey, who's the best company I should be targeting, right? Mm-hmm. It won't be able to figure out what is the best way to communicate and solve their problem. Okay. It can just look at the history of every time a situation like this has come up, right? And so what it means is, people need to understand that with these tools, they're going to make processes easier. How can they better manage them? right? And a salesperson now is going to need to know how to interact with AI. Okay. Your operational person, your marketing person, whoever they may be, your HR person, they are now going to need to know how to interact with AI. And that means you need the right type of people to do it, right? Back to the hiring point. Do you have people that are able to learn new things quickly, interact with technology, and bring creativity and ingenuity to apply? That's it.
I couldn't agree more that it's a fundamental change, especially in like go-to-market roles. However, I'll add that I think that people or salespeople especially, but also customer support, are going to need to be better at interacting with humans. Because I can write a sales sequence using Chat GPT that's just as good as 99% of anything you've seen so far.
Yeah.
And so I can get rid of, a large portion of the drudgery work that needs to be done. However, the expectations of the prospect when they pick up the phone and finally decide to talk to me in a consultative sale are going to be way higher. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah. I assume so. I mean, it's a good point, right? I think that's got to be proven out, but certainly they're still going to require the human element of it. I do think that salespeople are going to be required to close the deal. I don't see salespeople going away. I just see it being more of an issue of how do you leverage these tools to increase your capabilities,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Take out all the manual tasks of searching LinkedIn for hours a day, right?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. Any other specific sort of processes you see on the horizon that we should be walking? Because I think that it's one of those new topics, conversations, much like when the internet launched, and it's like, well, what is this good for?
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time.
I think that time will tell, but we've been waiting for this moment for now 75 years, probably since science fiction started being written. So I think it's a really interesting time. But I think what's been proven time and time again is it's people that set themselves to take advantage of new technologies, are the ones that win, right? And so don't be a resistor. You have to acknowledge, hey, the world is changing, it's moving on, it's doing these different things. We've got to be able to react to it. How can we best do it, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that it's a whole new era. It's a fast pace of innovation. And I taught, I've been saying fast paced innovation for, ever, because it's been going up, right?
Sure.
It has now just doubled. Okay.
So we've got an exponential curve.
Absolutely. Right. That's exactly it, and people need to understand that, and there's a whole bunch of different aspects, be it robots, machine learning, drones, all these things that are going on, cloud, right? I talk to people about cloud a lot. You probably have some people that are selling cloud related services, huge industry.
Sure.
Number one thing I say is the cloud was not built to save money. It's built for innovation. Okay. And so, I talk to, companies of all sizes. Hey, we didn't get the return on investment on cloud that we wanted. It's costing us so much money. Well, yeah, it is, because again, it wasn't built for cost savings. It was built for innovation. Okay. The way you can increase the speed of innovation with the cloud is dramatic. Combining it with MI or AI and ML resources that are in the cloud, dramatic increases in speed of innovation, right? Adding it to drones, robotics, dramatic increases. That's the exponential curve that we're just starting to hit.
For a dummy like me, give me a specific example. How does that work?
What's an example? So if I were to set up a brand new business right now, I could literally in today open up a data center up in the cloud with Amazon, set up AI and ML to operate on that, and have functional products that are almost coded themselves. Okay. In the space of a day, a few days, right? That's the world we're getting to, especially with robots built right into it. People don't know Amazon as a robotics person or a robotics organization really at this point, but I think it's their next big pillar, right? And so robots are going to be coming out here. And so you can literally, instead of having to take years to develop these things, that used to be 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you want to do something big with technology, you had to go build your own data center. That takes a year or two, right? Huge capital investments. You need to go build teams of people to go and start studying AI, right? You need to go and build a robotics team. You need to start experimenting with all this stuff. It's all now commoditized and online. So
So if I
that
say
period of
I
investment
want to
is,
create a robot that does a certain task, it's just really
yeah,
getting the idea out there and of course understanding if it's sustainable.
yeah, absolutely. And there's a number of people leaving Amazon that are doing startups, right, around robots specifically. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You've got the same thing in China. When I was at Amazon, we were looking at sortation processes, automation. And honestly, China, Alibaba, they were ahead of Amazon. This was 5 years ago, right? The use of robots. So there's a ton there. But again, it just means the pace of innovation is increasing. How do you set your companies up for success in that environment?
Okay, so we've seen the rise and now the sort of plateau or dip of the quote unquote tech industry, and I think about that as SaaS largely
Mhm.
driven. Are we looking now more towards swing back towards a product, hardware, services, robotics is the word that keeps coming up,
Yeah,
or are we
I
just
don't think this whole
maturing?
thing like the fall of tech is real. I think that that's just a marketing spin on things.
Mhm.
Um, the tech companies are the ones driving innovation in our economy because we are now an innovation based economy, right? Tech is just trying to figure out how to do it better and more efficiently as they should. So this is just a retrenchment as they get ready for tech V.2, right? Or V2. So as far as other big things coming, I think that it's the stuff we just talked about: robots, AI, ML. There's certainly still a little bit of discussion around like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. I think that that's not going to go anywhere. I do think that there's been enough issues with it now shown. It's going to get regulated. I think that the only thing I would look for is government-backed securities and cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
So I think that'll happen. So I don't know if any other major big things right now that I would actually worry about. There's certainly a lot of things happening around, agricultural technology is a huge area,
Mhm.
sustainability, huge area, green energy, supply chains, rebuilding those. But they're going to be taking advantage of these same things: robots, AI, ML.
Interesting. I'm hearing optimism about the coming 12 months.
Well, I think optimism from an innovation perspective, there's going to be a ton of stuff out there. Is it going to change things? Is it going to be disruptive to people's lives in ways that they've been doing things? Probably,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And so that's where I think that there's a governmental role to step in and figure out how to ease the switch, right?
In terms of, you feel like we're going to head more towards a recession and the government help will be needed to sort of keep people afloat, or more of an investment in the infrastructure of the types of things that support
Uh,
innovation?
I think what's needed with the government, and again, without getting tuned into politics, is it needs to provide businesses confidence that they should be investing. Okay.
Yeah.
So if they were to decrease some of the interest rates, of course, that spurs investment. People feel more confident, that's going to spur investment. And that will allow us to take these innovators. What I'm actually worried about, and I haven't seen in the numbers yet, but we keep talking about, oh, the employment rate is so low, we've got to keep lowering or raising interest rates in order to get
Cool
our
thing.
employment rate to change, right? My guess is now we're having a higher proportion of people at high income levels, these innovators, that are losing their jobs than the people at the lower income wages around, typical service jobs, your McDonald's and other things like this. And somebody who's going from, a software developer at Amazon is not likely to go take a role at McDonald's.
In terms
Okay?
that's for what's available, you're saying, in terms of the
That's
open
exactly
market.
it.
Yeah.
And so we've got to keep in mind that there's now really this innovation economy and there's a service economy that supports it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the government needs to make sure it's doing what's necessary for the service or for the innovation economy. And right now, I think it's too much focused on the old manufacturing and service economy that used to exist.
Yeah, I did notice that if you tease out some of the some of the data from the government reports, is that tech doesn't, it makes the news, but disproportionately to the amount of impact it seems to have on some of the reporting it does.
Right.
Okay, we got a next nice like couple minutes. I'm going to put up contact information for anybody who wants to contact you. Anything else in particular that we've not covered we want to end with?
I'd just say that innovation is the key to success for business, careers, and communities, right? So anything people want to do to learn it, it just requires some ambition interest to go out and learn innovation, bring it to your organizations, and you and everybody else will be better. So certainly people are welcome to get in touch that way. I do training with executive teams and large groups, and speak to groups like keynotes and things at conferences. So if anybody's interested, certainly reach out.
Yeah, it's been great, Trent, man. It's been excellent. I wish we had more time to sort of even dig into some more of these things. So maybe I'll get you to come back on soon. But
Sounds great.
really appreciate the time.
All right, thanks for the opportunity.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
everybody. And I will see you next time for the Unfair Advantage podcast, where we'll be talking to some other sales, HR, go-to-market leaders, and we'll hopefully have that next week.
Awesome.